Well, good morning, and welcome to Tuesdays with the Pilgrim, as we continue reading Pilgrim's Progress. We're in Chapter 18, Part 5, looking at Christiana and her 4 boys as they start their pilgrimage. Her name is Christiana, called that from the day she and her sons committed themselves to the pilgrim's life. After her husband had passed through the river, and she was unable to hear of him any more, thoughts concerning him began to stir in her mind. First she thought about how she had lost her husband. The loving bond between them had been completely broken. For as you know, our human nature makes those who are alive become deeply preoccupied with thoughts of loved ones who have recently departed. So these thoughts of her husband cost her many tears. But this was not all. Christiana began to wonder whether her inappropriate behavior towards her husband was a reason that he was gone and had been taken away from her. She became obsessed with memories of her unkind, unnatural, and ungodly behavior towards her dearest friend. Her conscience became clogged with conviction. She was overwhelmed with guilt. She was also broken by the remembrance of her husband's restless groanings, salty tears, and self-regret, and by the memory of how she had hardened her heart against all his pleas and loving persuasions that she and her sons go with him. Yes, there was not one thing that Christian had said or done in her presence during the time his burden hung on his back that did not return to her memory like a flash of lightning. Her heart was especially torn over his bitter lament. "What shall I do to be saved?" His words kept ringing sadly in her ears. Then she said to her children, "Sons, our lives are falling apart because I have sent your father away from us. He is gone, but he wanted us to go with him. I was stubborn and would not go myself, but I also hindered you from finding life." At that the boys burst into tears and cried out that they wanted to go after their father. "Oh," said Christiana, "if only we had gone with him, then things would surely be better than they are now. I foolishly imagined that your father's troubles had come from a silly whim or a melancholy mood, but now I cannot get it out of my mind that in very truth they sprang from another source, from the light of life that had been revealed to him, and because of this I believe he has escaped the snares of death." Then they all wept again and cried out, "Oh, woe is the day when we let him go on without us." Chapter 18, Part 6. The next night Christiana had a dream. Lo and behold, she saw a large scroll opened up before her. In it were recorded all the deeds of her life. She thought her crimes looked very dark and ugly indeed. Then she cried out in her sleep, "God, have mercy on me, a sinner." And her children heard her. After this, she thought she could see 2 ill-favored ones standing by her bed and saying, "What should we do with this woman? For she cries out for mercy when awake and asleep. If she continues on like this, we will lose her, as we have lost her husband. Therefore, in one way or another, we must seek to get her mind off the thoughts of things to come. If we fail, there will be nothing in the world to keep her from becoming a pilgrim." She awoke with a start, sweating and trembling, but after a while she fell asleep again. Then she dreamed that she saw Christian, her husband, in a place of bliss and surrounded by many immortals. He was standing before a throne with a harp in his hand, and he was playing the harp for the one seated there who had a rainbow about his head. She also saw Christian bow his head with his face to the pavement that lay under the prince's feet, and saying, "My lord and king, I thank you with all my heart for bringing me here safely and for receiving me into this place." Then a large number of those standing around him shouted and played their harps. No one alive could tell what they were shouting, except for Christian and his companions. Chapter 18, Part 7. Next morning, Christiana got up, and after she had prayed to God and talked with her boys for a while, someone pounded loudly on the door. She called out, "If you come in God's name, come in." "Amen, I do," he replied, and opened the door. He greeted her, saying, "Peace to this house, Christiana." "Do you know the reason I have come?" She began to blush and tremble, and her heart grew strangely warm, as she wondered where he had come from and what business he had with her. He continued, "My name is Secret, and I dwell with all those who are on high. There is talk among those I live with that you have a desire to go there. It is also reported that you are aware of the evil you formerly did to your husband in hardening your heart against his way and in keeping your young ones in their ignorance. Christiana, the Merciful One, has sent me to tell you that he is a God ready to forgive, and that he takes great delight in pardoning all of your offenses. He also wants you to know that he invites you to come into his presence, to his table, so that he can feed you and you may feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob. Your husband Christian is there with multitudes of companions, ever beholding that face that ministers life to all who gaze upon it. They will all rejoice greatly when they hear the sound of your feet stepping over your father's threshold." At this, Christiana lost all confidence in herself. Feeling greatly ashamed, she humbled her face to the ground. The visitor proceeded and said to her, "Christiana, here also is a letter I have brought to you from your husband's king." Chapter 18, Part 8. The Invitation to Christiana. Taking the letter, she opened it, and she could smell the fragrance of what seemed the finest of perfumes. The letter was written in gold letters, and its message was an exhortation from the king, who wanted her to do as Christian had done, for the way he had gone was the way to the king's city. He wanted her also to come and dwell in his presence with joy for evermore. At this she was overcome with emotion and cried out to her visitor, "Sir, will you take me and my children with you, so that we too may go and worship this king?" Then the visitor said, "Christiana, you must taste the bitter before the sweet. You must enter the celestial city through troubles, as did Christian who went before you. Therefore I advise you to do as he did. Go to the wicket gate out over the plain, for it stands at the beginning of the way you must travel. And I wish you great success. Also I advise that you keep this letter safe and close to your heart, and that you read it to yourself and to your children until it takes root deep within you. It's one of the songs that you must sing while you are still in your body, the earthly tent of your pilgrimage. You will also need this letter at the gate of the celestial city." Now I saw in my dream that this old gentleman, Mr. Sagacity, was deeply moved as he proceeded to tell me the story. Chapter 18, Part 9. The family makes a decision. Christiana called her sons together and said to them, "My sons, as you probably are aware, my soul has been in great turmoil recently over the death of your father. I do not doubt his happiness, and I am sure now that he is well. But I have been deeply affected with thoughts about our own condition, and have concluded that it is very desperate. My behavior towards your father in his time of distress has become a great burden to my conscience, for I hardened both my own heart and yours against him, and refused to go with him on his pilgrimage. Remembering these things would kill me outright if it weren't for a dream I had last night and the encouragement this stranger has given me. Come, my sons, let us pack up and set out for the gate that leads to the celestial city. Then we will see your father and be with him and his companions in peace according to the laws of that land." Then the boys burst into cheers of joy because of their mother's decision to go. So their visitor said goodbye, and they began to prepare for their journey. And we'll stop there for this week. Next week we'll pick up with Chapter 18, Part 10, The Neighbors Oppose Christiana's Decision. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.